My name is Homer Quintana. I'm the program manager for the Center for Rapid Device Translation. My job is to engage with industry, whether it's startups, large med tech companies, to bring in their technologies and collaborate with us to test those technologies within our facilities. Today, we're going to be joined by Dr. Michael Moreno, who's the Director of Innovation for Engineering Medicine at Texas A&M University. He's also Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering and Director of Biomechanical Environment Laboratories in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Texas A&M. Dr. Justin Bird is Assistant Professor for Orthopedic Oncology and Spine Surgery at MD Anderson Cancer Center. He's also the founder of Patients We Share, a digital health startup taking a social approach to improve communication and access in healthcare. And here we've got Kara Toman, who's the Senior Director of Research for Pediatric Urology at Texas Children's Hospital / Baylor College of Medicine. She's also the Associate Director for the Southwest National Pediatric Device Innovation Consortium. Quite a mouthful. And last, we've got Christine Luck. She's the Associate Principal at Fannin Innovation Studio, focusing on medical device commercialization. She's also the Portfolio Manager for the Southwest National Pediatric Device Innovation Consortium, responsible for building and managing a database of 140 pediatric startup companies. So with that said, I'm going to start with my presentation on the Center for Rapid Device Translation. So the goal of the Center for Rapid Device Translation is really to leverage resources that exist already within Houston Methodist to engage with industry partners to bring in these novel technologies for unmet needs that exist within the clinic and the healthcare continuum, and realistically collaborate with our clinicians and use these various resources that we have here. And I'm going to jump through this because I've got a video at the end that explains those resources in greater depth. But realistically, some examples of the technologies that have come into Houston Methodist include the Neurescu bleed monitoring and prevention device. We've got a cold ablation robotic laser cutting technology for oral maxillofacial surgery that's come from Europe. And locally, we've got a company called VenoStent that developed a dialysis access wrap. And I'm going to be talking about them in particular when it comes to how companies engage with Houston Methodist. Next slide. So first of all, you have to understand that the value in Houston Methodist isn't really in the facilities, isn't in the equipment, it's in the access to clinicians, key opinion leaders, champions that you can engage as a startup or medical device company and really get their feedback in developing your technology. Get them along for the ride for early proof of concept testing, large animal studies, and then eventually move into clinical trials. And so we've got clinical areas that are broad. We like to think at the Center for Rapid Device Translation that we are technology agnostic. I'm not looking for just one category of technologies in one space. If there's a need and there's a champion within Houston Methodist that believes in that technology, we're going to approach it together to see if we can succeed. Next slide. So I'm really honing in on something that's novel to Houston Methodist, and really it's through MITIE, the Methodist Institute for Technology, Innovation, and Education, and that's our Acute research protocol. So this is how you open a door to innovation. In most places, you have to find a PI that's going to be involved in submitting the animal use protocol, and they're taking stewardship of the project. Here, we have a general protocol that will allow a company to come off the street and say, I've got this device, I want to implant it in a large animal model. It's the first time I'm doing it, so I'm not too certain how this is going to go. Is there any way for us to do this quickly? And the answer is through this vehicle. You're able to bring in up to 5 animals, implant your device, take that data, and realistically, it's more than just proving the efficacy of your technology. It's bridging a potential collaboration to entice our clinicians to say, hey, they did the work in MITIE, it was efficient, it actually worked out. Would you like to be a part of this extended collaboration? So there's a twofold approach here. The company gains value because A, they've proven their technology actually works, and they can go to VCs, they can go to angels, they can go to different organizations and say, our tech is actually working. But realistically, you're also getting the clinicians excited because it's in MITIE, it's right down the hall from us, and I can pull different people for very specific specialties and say, hey, take a look at this. It's been vetted. Next slide, please. So I talked about grant-funded collaborations and the value of working with a Houston Methodist or any of these academic institutions and how quickly it is possible to bring a technology to the clinic or at least approach the clinic. So the example that I give here, I spoke VenoStent, this dialysis access prevention wrap. This company reached out to us in late 2017. I want you to look at the timeline because time is really important when you're talking about getting something to the clinic and benefiting patients. We've all heard statistics of how long it takes therapeutics, drugs to get into the clinic, 18 years, billions of dollars. Well, medical devices can be a lot faster. And you know, the word rapid is in the title of the Center for Rapid Device Translation, and the goal is to accelerate those processes, break through those barriers, and ensure that we've got the right administrative functions available to deliver these technologies into a clinical setting. So VenoStem's a great example. We executed a sponsored research agreement with them in 2018, did a bit of work to develop some flow models in vitro. That data was then submitted to an SBIR grant, which was funded, that then funded another grant through subsequent data. And before you knew it, the company had nearly $1 million in non-dilutive funding. So if you're talking about just building equity without having to, or building value without having to give up equity, going through these non-dilutive pathways and engaging with the right academic institutions. And then they were fortunate enough to come from the state of Tennessee, which would match anything that they got in a non-dilutive fashion. So they got $500,000 in non-dilutive funding, $500,000 matched, you got $1 million in about a year and a half. You're propelling your technology forward. But beyond that, you're engaging with key opinion leaders and clinicians that are going to drive your innovation and are really in it for the long haul. And so we've got Dr. Eric Peden, who's the chair of vascular surgery. We've got Dr. Christoph Karmanik, who's the director of our MRI core, and Dr. John Cook, who is the academic director of our CV Sciences program. And realistically, they moved along. They conducted their first in vivo man study in June in Paraguay. Think of that timeline. You go from developing models in 2018, 2019, to first in man in 2021. And as of right now, it's in 20 people in Paraguay. And realistically, they're going to take that data, they're going to talk to the FDA, and they're going to be pursuing a US pilot pivotal study to work with Houston Methodist. And so that's the continuity of moving technology very efficiently and rapidly. And realistically, as you learned earlier, the training and teaching comes once it's been approved. So MITIES the perfect continuum of that cycle of a cure that we've developed at Houston Methodist. So here's that video.
Located in the heart of the Texas Medical Center, the largest medical complex in the world, the Center for Rapid Device Translation at Houston Methodist assists medical device companies as they drive their technology from idea to the clinic with safety, accuracy, and efficiency. We facilitate projects ranging from proof of concept to preclinical studies and clinical trials, and our centralized resources support the rapid development of medical device technology, all within one campus. The Comparative Medicine program features 65,000 square feet of space dedicated to large and small preclinical models with flexible housing configurations. The program offers good laboratory practice and non-good laboratory practice services for conducting risk, safety, and efficacy assessment studies in compliance with current FDA guidelines. Veterinary pathologist services and expertise for interpretation of preclinical study data are also available. With its newly installed Siemens 7 Tesla MRI, the Translational Imaging Core provides access to high-performance imaging for preclinical and clinical investigative studies, including magnetic resonance imaging and positron emission tomography. The core also features an on-site cyclotron creating radiopharmaceuticals for use in investigative studies and a preclinical and PET imaging clinic for multimodality imaging studies of preclinical models. The Preclinical Catheterization Core Laboratory offers a state-of-the-art environment to test novel vascular devices and techniques and provide training in the use of medical devices in preclinical or inanimate models. The lab manager has over 25 years of experience developing preclinical models designed to test all types of cardiovascular, perivascular, neurovascular, and endovascular devices and techniques. The Houston Methodist Institute for Technology, Innovation, and Education, or MITIE, features 35,000 square feet of continuous space to quickly assess technology for proof of concept or early feasibility testing, as well as to train in the use of commercially available technology. MITIE consists of a virtual presence suite and networking connectivity throughout the Houston Methodist Hospital system, a skills lab equipped with 15 stations to conduct hands-on procedural training using various models, and private ORs, and a hybrid surgical suite containing an angio suite and MR capability within one room, allowing for real-time image-guided procedures. One of the largest facilities of its kind in the world, MITIE is a destination for emerging new technology and procedural techniques. The Center for Rapid Device Translation provides industry partners with access to leading experts from a broad range of Houston Methodist clinical specialties, many of which have earned top rankings from U.S. News and World Report. By working with key opinion leaders early in their projects, clients receive invaluable real-world input about their technologies. This can reveal issues from the professional perspective in the environments where the technology will be used. The facilities and expertise provided by the Center for Rapid Device Translation are here to guide and assist clients through their safety studies and regulatory approval pathways to bring new medical devices to market. We provide full-service expertise and study execution to achieve preclinical device validation and open the door for early-phase clinical testing via the Houston Methodist Academic Office of Clinical Trials. To learn more about the Center for Rapid Device Translation, please visit rapiddevicetranslation.org.
I think that's a wrap. There's my contact information. Please feel free to reach out. And next, I'm going to be having Dr. Michael Moreno present on his efforts here at Texas A&M. Please.
All right, so you can kind of see the way my slide deck starts with synergistic collaborations. We believe that collaborating is a way that you can have the whole exceed the sum of the parts. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more generally about Texas A&M. So this is what the campus looks like up there, or at least this is part of the campus. And it's huge. And if we were to actually back this out where you could see the whole campus, you wouldn't be able to read what they want you to see in this, which is welcome to Aggie Land. But the other thing that you may not be aware of is we've already got land acquired at another campus about this size going up called the Rellis campus. So you can look that up. So it's really just continuing to, you could use explode, but that sounds violent, so I'm going to use blossom like a flower. It's just getting larger and larger. So go ahead and kind of go through this. So you got 133 undergraduate programs, 175 master's degree programs, 92 doctoral programs. Go ahead and keep going. Almost 5,000 instructional faculty that you can see here. 2 Nobel laureates, 3 Wolf Prize recipients, 5 members of the National Academy of Medicine, 29 members of the National Academy of Engineering. And if we look at the engineering numbers, 21,000 engineering students, 21,000. 725 faculty members, 15 academic departments. So we've got biomedical engineering, mechanical. I could read all these to you. What you see is a lot of conventional engineering departments up there. And then you see some that are a bit more unusual. I can tell you that more than half of these are top 10 in the country. We've got the #1 engineering in the state. This new one, multidisciplinary engineering. This is something that's kind of evolved organically because one of the things that's happened is, engineering collaborating across multiple disciplines. The faculty has engineering expertise, but the collaborator, their expertise might be in another area, whether it's veterinary science or medicine or biology. And so this multidisciplinary engineering program is kind of an acknowledgement that the graduate students that are working on the projects actually are uniquely trained because they're getting advisement from their engineering mentor if they're getting a degree in engineering, but they're also learning a lot about the other area that the collaboration is occurring across. And so, of course, this feeds into the building that you're sitting in right now, the InMed building. And so when we talk about the master's degree that the InMed students get, it's through this multidisciplinary engineering. So we're in this building. You can kind of see already that the housing building is about ready to open up. And when we talk about collaborations, there's 10 floors that have yet to be built out in the building that we're in right now. And so we already are going to build out 2 floors on the A&M side of research space. And so we're ready to kind of open up that part of the InMed concept because it's been focused on the medical education program up to this point. I know that Methodist has talked about potentially building out space here. We've had different industry partners think about this as well. But in addition to that, you've got the Horizon Tower, which is the other building that's going up. And this was conceived to be kind of commercial lab space. It could be clinical office space, different opportunities here. And that building is going to be huge. Go ahead, next slide. So when we talk about InMed, and collaboration, one of the things that I really like is that, the dean for InMed was the founding director for the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering at the National Institute of Health. And some people will see this about Dr. Pettigrew, but the key thing to take away from this is that this was actually the most prolific institute at NIH for developing innovative medical technologies. And so there's really not a better person to kind of lead this program. The other thing is think about the network that you get when your hand is on the purse strings for the funding that's going out for this. And so he's wired in like internationally, so not just in the country. And I've been privy to a lot of the communiques that are happening and a lot of the collaborative opportunities that are starting to unfold now for Texas A&M and InMed. And I do want to make that clear. The other thing that's happening in this building and building out is we do tend to kind of focus on InMed here in Houston, but biomedical engineering. They have a great program, a Master of Engineering program that's kind of focused on the biodesign process for developing medical technologies. They're going to have a larger presence down here. So definitely goes cross-campus. In mechanical engineering, we've got people who've been interested in surgical robotics, rehabilitative robotics, imaging, and electrical engineering. So it's not just biomedical engineering. Those other engineering disciplines are important. So this is a graphic that Dr. Pettigrew did, so I love showing this, where we talk about integrating engineering and medicine. Go ahead, next slide. And so there's a number of different ways that we do this. I'm just going to talk about one now. So imagine, if you're a medical school student, you're learning about respiratory physiology, but at the same time, you're learning about different technologies, at one point that were innovative, like a ventilator, that have been designed to diagnose, treat, or monitor patients with respiratory ailments. And so, they're learning how the respiratory system functions, but at the same time, they're learning how to manipulate the function of the respiratory system. And so this is just one application of this kind of blending that you can see. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. Now, one of the things that we expect from all of the InMed students is that they're going to contribute to the development of innovative medical technologies while they're in the program. Now, this can happen by developing their own ideas, and we're already getting IP disclosures from some of the students, but we also want to give them opportunities to have experience working with people that have things happening already. I mean, that's a good way to maybe trigger your own ideas, right? Or to learn how that process works. And so there's a number of ways that we do this that are kind of collaborative. One, you just heard Homer talk about Methodist and things that are going on there. So they have a capstone program that they go, and I think year 2 is getting ready to launch for the capstone program. So the InMed students have that opportunity. Another one is the Air Force Research Laboratories. There are a number of projects. The Air Force Research Laboratory projects are, these are with Texas A&M researchers up in the College Station campus. Continue. We can also do international opportunities. So before COVID hit, I was going to Rwanda every summer with this Engineering World Health sponsored program. And there was one year that I actually took one of the pilot students for the InMed program. And when you're in these resource-limited settings, one of the things that they've totally kind of committed to is digital health. They see that as one of the most kind of cost-efficient ways to improve healthcare for all. So it's a really interesting setting when you get over there, because I've made friends over there that live in homes where they don't have running water. They may have electricity that's marginal at best, but they have cell phones, which is kind of interesting. And one of the reasons why they're making that happen is because those cell phones are going to enable this digital health. And so a lot of telemedicine is a big kind of emphasis in these resource-limited settings. And then another way that we've done this, we literally just launched some projects this week with MD Anderson, our partner over there. And so I'm going to use this as my point to segue, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Justin Bird, and he'll tell you about MD Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Moreno. And Dr. Moreno and I have been working together. We met through COVID and all the activities and trying to get people the PPE they need and things like that. So we ended up meeting just from that experience, and then realized that we had so many overlapping interests and reasons to work together and collaborate. And so we've continued that, and that's part of the reason why I'm here today, and got a chance to meet with work with Dr. Robbins. And it's very interesting. My story also involves work outside of this country. So I was a resident I did medical school and residency in New York City at Mount Sinai. During that time, I had a chance to go to Malawi with one of my faculty members and see and teach in that environment. And I decided that I wanted to do some more of that in my life journey. And so I decided after residency, I was going to go to West Africa and spend a year there. So I went to Liberia. And that's where the light bulb went off for me. And I realized in that type of environment where I didn't have an x-ray machine in the hospital for many months, I didn't have typical things that we use every day in orthopedics in my residency that I took for granted. I realized how important these things were, and I had a role in helping develop or test these technologies and create better ways to take care of patients and address our problems. And so that's part of my story, and it's very interesting to hear kind of the overlap. And I would recommend everybody to go outside of our state, outside of our country, and see what's happening elsewhere in the world, and we see, the things that are happening in Ukraine and such. There's a lot of need around the world, so we can be a part of those solutions. So I'm a faculty member at MD Anderson now. Fast forward, I've been there for 10 years, did my fellowship in orthopedic oncology and then a spine fellowship. Spent time at Methodist and part of that crew as well. And then landed at Anderson, just taking care of patients initially, but always with this idea of how technology comes, to play a pivotal role in what we do. And if you think about my experience in Liberia, not having an X-ray, now I use CT guidance, navigation systems to do the surgeries that we do. It's pretty amazing to see that and be able to be a part of that experience. We realized that at Anderson we did not have a good structure in place to get these ideas out. And it all starts with, I see this problem every single day. What am I going to do about this? And you can just continue to deal with that problem or just make do or say, let me set aside some time to focus on that problem and figure out a solution that's going to be better than what we have right now. And so that's the genesis of it, right? And it's very easy. Everyone in this room can do that. I mean, it doesn't take a PhD, a MD. Many of the ideas are in front of us, and anyone can do that. I have little kids, and they come up with ideas all the time that I start to incorporate into what I'm doing, and it's pretty amazing. And also hearing Dr. Pettigrew and his talk about Dick Tracy and the watch, I was thinking we just bought my son a Gizmo, which is a little watch that he can call us because he's running around playing sports. So all these things are connected, and I try and wrap that in. That's another thing I'd say to young people, is just to take all these experiences, enjoy them, roll them into your life story, and then figure out how you're going to work with others, and that's a big part of my life. So we can go to the next slide. I think we know that MD Anderson is world-renowned, right? And this is Dr. James Allison, who's a Nobel Prize winner, and we're really known for great patient care, multidisciplinary care. Again, collaborations are important. We're also known for great clinical trials and therapeutics. But I'm a surgeon, and I use medical devices, so where are we with that? You can go to the next slide. We do have a great history at MD Anderson in surgical innovation. But I think, we are up against Nobel Prize winners, so they get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. But we've also had a lot of firsts at MD Anderson, and many of the surgical techniques and approaches have been pioneered at Anderson over the years. This is one of our great plastic surgeons, Jesse Selber, and this was the first scalp transplant in the world, and that's a patient that he took care of. We have very innovative surgeons. This is a 3D printed model of a osteosarcoma of the distal femur. It's sitting on the back of the femur, and that was a model that I created to take care of a patient of mine. And so instead of taking out this entire distal femur and putting in a metal implant, we wanted to save the joint, but it's very close to the joint. So we did a 3D printed model, cutting guides, 3D printed cutting guides, so that we could remove this tumor and then reconstruct it with an allograft and a carbon fiber implant, so we could do better surveillance after the fact, and saved her knee joint. And so these are things that we can do now that we couldn't do just years ago. Again, thinking back to West Africa, when are we going to get this technology to those places? And that's some of the things that we could think about. Next slide. We know that I'm very excited. I came from New York not knowing what was here, and we know what's here. We need to leverage each other's experience. All of these patients that are coming in, all these great institutions and minds that we can really, again, solve some of the really challenging problems. So we should be taking advantage of it every day. You can go to the next slide. We know that there's this innovation ecosystem emerging, and this slide is old, back in a number of years ago when these things were popping up, the TMCX and the CDI with Billy Cohn. These are some of our faculty members, neurosurgeons, Jeff Weinberg and J.B. Duran, a cardiologist, that are involved and are happy to collaborate with folks, work with startups, advise, things of that nature. You can go to the next slide. And then we know that the future is coming. A lot of dirt is being moved and concrete poured for this campus and also the Texas Medical Center TMC3. So we're really excited for that. This is the campus that is coming down the pike. Trying to look for my office is somewhere right here. This is the Pickens Tower, I believe. And so as I look out my back window, I see the cranes and the trucks and the guys digging the dirt that are going to be the foundation for this. So really excited for that, and we should figure out how we're going to really take advantage of this opportunity together. So we can move on to the next slide. And so just, again, going back to the Ideas Lab, what is that? Well, we realize that at Anderson, very collaborative. I do a lot of surgeries that are unique in the sense that it's a unique problem, cancer type, sarcomas. They're very rare. They involve many different organ systems, and so when we do these surgeries, it may be 5 or 6 surgeons on the team, which is a great opportunity because the collisions that Dr. Pettigrew was talking about, the cross-pollination of ideas, all that happens in that space where I'm operating to remove a spine tumor, as an example, or a pelvic tumor, and I get a chance to work with one of the world's best plastic surgeons or GYN surgeons or thoracic surgeons. And just on a simple level, some of the tools that they bring into the OR that they use on an everyday basis that I've never seen as an orthopedic surgeon, I say, wow, that's amazing, and I need that, and then start to think about how I could apply that to what I do. So those are the things that we realized we could do in our institution, given our collaborative nature, and we are a multidisciplinary team of surgical innovators that really want to shape the future of cancer surgery. And it's not just about surgery or a device, it's thinking about procedures, educational experiences, the actual suites that we work in. A lot, you would maybe find it hard to believe that some of the challenges are how the bed is built that we put a patient on and how we position them. And I do, again, a lot of navigation surgery, so we're using stereotactic systems, but line of sight becomes an issue because we have beams that are providing light, but they're in the way of our tracking devices. So a big challenge with that, and we spend hours of extra time trying to get the right position and the right look at things so that we can just get the job done. So I think there's a great opportunity there. So I think that's my last slide, and looking forward to the Q&A.
So my name is Toman, and I work at Baylor College of Medicine and Texas Children's Hospital. I am the Director of Research for Pediatric Urology, and also provide consult to the Division of Surgery at Texas Children's Hospital. Also the Associate Director of the SWPDC. So that's what I'm going to spend the majority talking about today. Next slide. So the SWPDC stands for the Southwest Pediatric Device Medical Consortium. So basically, the FDA recognized that there was an unmet need for pediatric medical devices. As you guys know, a lot of these talks today were focusing on adults, but obviously there's a big need in pediatrics too. So the FDA created these programs, these funded programs, in order to promote the creation, the invention, and the commercialization of pediatric medical devices. So our mission statement is we aim to attract and support pediatric device innovators toward their goals of commercialization and clinical use of novel pediatric devices within the guidelines of the FDA Pediatric Device Consortia program. So every year, the FDA gives us roughly $1.3 million to use towards this program. We are, go to the next slide, please. So we're one of 5 PDCs within the United States. As you see, we serve pretty much this area here, but we work with people from all over the country. We are isolated to innovators that are based in the United States. We have worked with international companies before, but that's because they have local offices based somewhere in the United States. The funding does come from the FDA, so they want to see patients served here, the devices commercialized here. So next slide. So some of our partners, we have quite a large hub of people that we work with in Houston and throughout the greater Houston area and ecosystem. So obviously the grant is based at Baylor College of Medicine and Texas Children's Hospital. We partner with University of Houston, Rice University, Texas A&M, Fannin Innovation Studios, Biotechs, and we work a lot with Proxima, which is a local CRO that some of you might be familiar with. So we also have hubs in Dallas, Austin, Phoenix, Arkansas, and Nebraska. So we really do aim to fill the gap of pretty much serving the area of the Midwest, since we are the closest PDC, but as I mentioned, we work with innovators from all over the country. Next slide. So some of our offerings, if you hit the slide, it'll populate some of these. There we go. So some of our offerings, we do offer capstone projects in collaboration with Rice and Texas A&M. We put out a call for needs for that in the springtime, so those will go out soon, where basically we ask, it's kind of a two-way streak, but we ask physicians at Texas Children's Hospital what are their unmet needs, and then we present those to the different committees at Texas A&M and Rice, and pair those with engineering students so that they can create a device to fit that need, to fit that problem. We also work with master students outside of capstone programs through Rice and Texas A&M. And then we have, as I mentioned, the commercial partners with Fannin, Biotechs, and several different startups and regulatory. So we have a lot of various ways that we can help and promote companies through their device development space. So another aspect where we can help companies is the clinical application. So sometimes we have developers that contact us, and they already have a device, they already have the majority of their work done. Say they're in the midst of their regulatory application and they're looking for 510(k) filing and they need to do a clinical trial. And they're looking for basically clinical collaborators in the pediatric space. So obviously, Texas Children's Hospital is one of the largest children's hospitals in the United States with over 1,000 beds, multiple specialties. So we connect those people with various clinical collaborators and physicians in order to help facilitate those clinical trials needed for to help the regulatory approval process. So another way that we help advance pediatric device development is obviously, we encourage a lot of our companies, our portfolio companies, to look for SBIR and STTR grants. We have resources that we can help them in this space. We work with bioscience writers through U of H if they need help and guidance on those grant applications. Next slide. And we also offer direct device funding. A large part of our budget every year is we offer direct device funding through various prize competitions, mostly held in the spring, and then we have a few in the fall as well. So in previous years, we did offer this at South by Southwest, which this year that will be an offering, but next year likely will be. Rice Business Plan Competition and Texas A&M New Ventures. So we partner with our collaborators and host some of these competitions through these already available platforms. And in that, we offer a pediatric prize, often in the total amount of ranging from up to $50,000. The FDA does place a cap on the prizes that we can give out every year among the PDC to total $50,000. But as I mentioned, we can help device developers in many different areas other than funding. Next slide, please. So some of the other ways that we can help is through consulting support through Proxima. They do a lot of our regulatory work. A lot of people that we found, a lot of innovators, companies, don't necessarily know how to target the pediatric space from a regulatory standpoint, and they think the easiest avenue is to start on the adult path, which is great, and maybe the device doesn't always fit the need of pediatrics. But the FDA defines pediatrics from birth until the age of 21. So you already have a market there potentially from adolescence to 21 years of age. So when you're applying for your 510(k) or your breakthrough device designation or your HDE, whatever your path may be, you have an opportunity to not only apply for adult approval, but also pediatrics if your device fits that space. And the FDA wants you to do so. Sorry, go back one more. And I also want to reiterate the clinical collaborators. You know, there are a lot of people that really don't know the next steps when it comes to their, you know, how do they work with physicians? How do they get into the hospital? How do they, what's the process? So we can help with that process. We spend a lot of time, as I mentioned, you know, connecting clinical collaborators, finding the expertise in the specific areas that these innovators are looking for, and then helping to guide them through the process. Baylor offers faculty seed grants, which can help to either offset time for that physician clinical champion, or to aid in the or to aid and help via the means of a research coordinator, regulatory analyst, a lot of different ways that money can be used for to help that clinical trial within the hospital. We also offer connections to local accelerators and incubators. We do have a lot of companies that are not from the Houston area, and so they're not familiar with the ecosystem that's here. As you guys know, this is a growing, we've seen tremendous growth in the past 2 years since COVID. We partner with J Labs, with TMC Innovation, and you know, some of it is about just educating, especially new early companies, but the resources that we have here in the local area. So, next slide. So yeah, if you want more information, feel free to visit our website or just shoot us an email. So some of you may know Dr. Chester Coe. He's Executive Director of the SWPDC and urologist at Texas Children's Hospital. And then, of course, my information as well.
Hi, my name is Christine Luck. I'm an associate principal at Fannin Innovation Studio, which is not an academic institution, but I figured this might be good to sort of give an example of how a startup can utilize these great resources offered by all the institutions here in the Texas Medical Center. So I'll be talking about bridging the gap from academia to commercialization. So Fannin Innovation Studio, we develop early stage medical devices and drug therapeutics. I'm on the medical devices side. And so we are a for-profit early stage life sciences development group. And so we bridge the gap between academics, and so all of these research being done in the med center, how will that eventually end up in clinic? And so that's where Fannin comes in. And so we're not an accelerator, we're not an incubator, we call ourselves a studio. And so how it works is we in-license technologies from these institutions, or we develop them internally. We've got a couple of ideas that we've started in-house, and then those have flourished into their own maturing companies. And so we typically, when we in-license these technologies, we go for non-dilutive grant funding in the beginning to continue to do our due diligence and de-risk these technologies and getting them through the preclinical stage and through FDA regulation and through clinical and commercialization. And so once it's reached a certain point, that line is kind of ambiguous of when that is. Eventually these portfolio projects will become its own standalone companies. I'll be showing some examples of those in the upcoming slides. So how we're different from other startups is that we utilize a pooled management team under which this umbrella of portfolio companies are managed. And so for example, like I run this project called Choreo Anchor, which is a fetal surgery implant, and but I also am able to help out with other projects in our portfolio as well, and so it's a shared ownership, shared management. So it's not individually owned startups, it's all owned and run by Fannin. And so we leverage a diversified portfolio of all sorts of different things, and you'll see that in the next slide, and we utilize a capital efficient model. And so instead of going straight to investorship, we tend to look for non-dilutive funding first, which I highly recommend for startups because you don't want to dilute yourself too early on. So again, we're not a funding source. You can look to the SWPDC for that. And we're also not an incubator for standalone companies. Next slide, please. And so here's just sort of that an example of that timeline of how that works, starting out with the Fannin management team at the beginning, and then with the scientific founders that we had in-licensed from. We always looked to make sure we maintain that relationship with them. After all, they've been working on this for however X many number of years. They're the experts, and so we always want to make sure that they end up as a important collaborator with us, staying on with the project. But that way they don't have to quit their day job, you know, as a lot of these scientists, a lot of these clinicians, like this is what, they don't want to run a company, right? And so that's where we come in. Yes, thank you. And so as you can see, like this is how we've leveraged grant funding. Our favorites are SBIR and STTR grants, and how that can be used as a less risky way to develop these early stage technologies. As you guys know, medical devices, drug therapeutics are just so challenging to innovate, to bring through the de-risking process, right? And so if it fails, then this allows the flexibility to pivot or to try and take it back to the drawing board. And then once it starts to get its legs and you start gathering preclinical data from these from research done in these grants, then you can start pursuing other grants and start talking to investors. I've noticed that a lot of investors are hesitant to invest in early stage medical devices just because they're so risky. And so by leveraging non-dilutive grant funding, you can bring your technology to a point where it's a lot more appetizing to investors. Next slide, please. So here's a slide of our team, our core team of with lots of experience in drug and device development, leveraging scientific and engineering backgrounds, and here's some leadership from our spin-out companies as well. Procerian is a, I think they're in clinic now. I think they're running clinical trials now. Procerian and Pulmatect. So those are some of our later stage companies. Next slide, please. And you don't have to look, I know this is really small font, but this is just to show just the breadth of collaborators that we have, and I think this needs to be updated even, of all different centers here in Houston as well as outside of Houston as well. And so it's always, every portfolio company that we have kind of tells a different story of how we started off with finding these collaborators, whether they came to us or we found them, or we found them through a tech transfer office, all different unique stories, but we're very grateful for all of these fantastic collaborators that we've had, and they're able to continue doing their job as a clinician or scientist, and we can take the reins to help them build their idea that they had, to fulfill an unmet need, to drive it towards the clinic. So here's our active portfolio programs. The left side is the therapeutics companies, and the right side is our medical device companies. A couple years back, we acquired a aptamer development company. We now call it Raptamer Development Group because I think it was a velociraptor pun. I know. You should check out our website. It's really fun. All of these projects range from very early stage concept development all the way through starting clinical trials, and so it's exciting to work through all of these stages of development with all of our projects. And Brevitest is one of our latest spin-outs on the medical devices side. They are developing a rapid COVID antibody test, which has been very exciting the past couple of years. Basically, March 2020 happened, and I get a call, and we're like, we're going to go to market in 2 weeks. I'm sorry, what? We're going to do it. Okay, 2 years later, now we're ready to go to market. But the fact that we were able to really accelerate and utilize our flexible model to be able to really accelerate this project so quickly, it's truly telling of Fannin's model. They're a very unique and mildly confusing model. If you can hit next, please. And so these three items here in the bottom and also Brevitest are part of the SWPDC. So I wanted to highlight kind of how Fannin is involved with the SWPDC. So we serve as the commercialization experts in the group, and also as part of that pipeline from capstone projects through commercialization. And so For example, so Choreo Anchor started out as an idea from doctors Michael Belfort and Jimmy Espinoza from Texas Children's Hospital Fetal Surgery Center. They went to the SWPDC and said, we have an unmet need and kind of an idea to get these students started. And so then Texas A&M senior design students developed the first prototype for the Choreo Anchor delivery device and suture anchor set. And then after that, it continued to mature and develop all of its design inputs and design specifications and early stage prototypes with the master's program. And then at some point after that program, they were like, okay, I think we're ready to, I think this is a candidate to potentially go to market. And so that's when Fannin came in and we wrote a couple of grants and continued to do acute animal studies. I think we started in rabbit models and then porcine cadaver studies and continuing to iterate upon that. And then we were fortunate enough to land a phase 2 SBIR grant to continue bringing in. We brought in Proxima for our regulatory, and so I am now navigating the twisty turns of the FDA, which has been a really great experience. And now we're developing our manufacturing plan for this device, and I'm writing a grant for like the next 3 years, and I'm like, 3 years from now, I think we're going to be able to do it. So that's all really exciting. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. And so that's one of an example of how the SWPDC can bring these technologies to fruition, I guess. And so I was really excited to hear about NMED, and I'm hoping that there's a place for collaboration between us and the NMED projects. But that's, and then Securin as well as a pediatric urology device, and that also started as a master's, as a capstone project at A&M. And so we don't all, not only do we develop products, but we also develop people. And so there's just so much talent here in the medical center. I'm looking at all my interns in the front row. Thank you for coming. And so we want to develop this next generation of medical device and drug therapeutic scientists and engineers. And so we have an internship and a fellowship program that develops these early career scientists that have been in the lab all the time. Well, they want to pursue a career in entrepreneurship and commercialization or industry and get out of the lab and put down the pipette. And so they are able to join our programs to get this experience. And so to date, we've had over probably 250 interns now in the past couple of years, all around the United States, but also like mostly in Texas. And so it's always exciting to see where these students go. I don't know if Korean is still in here. We've got 2 from the NMED program, the 2 that are in the NMED program now, so it's really exciting to see these interns become physician-ears. And so thank you so much for your time. Please feel free to contact me if you're a student looking to learn more or looking for collaboration, career opportunities, and also for pediatric devices. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone. So first of all, I want to thank all of the speakers and presenters here, really sharing the concept that we've got an ecosystem that is willing to support your development of technology. And so knock on any of our doors, and we're going to try to give our best to help you move forward. With that, I'd love for the speakers to join me in standing, and if we've got any questions, we'd love to field them. Dr. Boone. Yeah, sure. So I started at Houston Methodist as a project specialist for the then CEO of the Research Institute and a master's program in clinical translation, very specific niche to developing and taking an idea from literally an idea through a full commercialization and understanding all of the components that can potentially limit you. You know, finding the silos and bridging those gaps and avoiding that valley of death. And so this program through the University of St. Thomas has really just continued. I think it's in its 7th cohort now, and I actually taught the current cohort in the Intro to Clinical Translation this last 8 weeks. And realistically, it is the growing need of people that have this expertise and this particular perspective. You know, as more and more of these biotech and life science companies come out, there's a greater need for people that can understand how to take a technology and prevent it from dying. There's so many ways, there's a million ways to die in biotech, and avoiding all of them and having the right qualified personnel to do that is really essential. Anyone else?
So I was just wondering, I mean, Houston seems like a great space, obviously, there's these massive hospitals that also could collaborate really well with each other. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the areas you'd still like to maybe see growth in the future, or any challenges you just run into in terms of collaborating between these massive institutions.
Dr. Bird, I'd love for you to take that if that's all right.
Are there any lawyers in the room? No. I mean, I think it is difficult when you have an institution and there's a lot of reasons to put walls around, what you've already done, right? And that's a big part of the challenge. We know what we're good at and like stick to that. And that we've heard in many industries, like that can be a block to innovation, because you're doing well, you're making money in this space, but then we need to, give you time to do something else. So we all have to like work through that through our own institutions. And I think what we're seeing is people are saying, yes, let's do this, and we see what's happening in the Med Center and in Houston, so that's good. There's still everybody is always concerned about, can I trust you? Like that's a big issue, right? Every time we start to share ideas, we want to know, can I trust you? Are you going to do a good job of protecting this baby as we're trying to get it out there in the world? So those are some of the, just simple, basic things. They make sense, but we have to work with good people, find people that we trust, build that trust over time, and then that helps us like break down some of these barriers.
Yeah, I'll agree to everything that he just said, that it's about finding the right people to work with. And I think, the mindset that we've had with InMed is that when we're establishing these relationships, it's not just about a project. It's about something that's going to go on for life. Like I see us working with Methodist for life because, they talked about how broad their interests are. And our program, one of the questions I've been asked commonly was, what area are you guys going to focus on? As if we needed to focus. Is it cardiovascular? Is it orthopedics? No, we've got these InMed students are going off. You're one of them, right? You guys are going off in all kinds of different directions. And so, we have to be able to, to continue our mission, we got to collaborate in that way. The good news is that most of these people here who are up here with me are the same mindset, right? And so I think the key thing that I said in all that is when you're talking about the trust and establishing that kind of relationship, is our mindset is whenever we start a collaboration, Justin and I've already talked about this, we're going to do this for life. Methodist, for life as far as I'm concerned. That's the mindset.
I'll just add very quickly. So we don't function as a CRO. We're not a contract research organization. I'm not just looking for a one-off project where you're going to get your data and you're going to go off and do something. As I mentioned, you've got to have a champion, someone in the clinic that's going to be driving this thing with you. And we want to see the fruition of that technology reach the clinic. So that's probably the very first thing when I discuss with companies, hey, we're not just going to do this one project where you implant something into an animal and off you go. We need to have somebody on board, and it's going to be a longitudinal collaboration. As you can see, sometimes 4 or 5 years, but realistically, there's so much value for our clinicians, value for our patients, and obviously value for the companies. One thing we're doing continuously is assessing processes that we have here to knock down those barriers to entry. The Center for Rapid Device Translation has only been around for 5 years now. Prior to that, everything that was front-facing outside was just for our own investigators. So opening that door, and I consider myself a steward of technology and a de-risker. That's all I want to help you do. I want to help shepherd your technology along and de-risk it and build its value along the way, because I know that's your baby, as Dr. Bird said, and I'm trying to take care of the baby.
It's hard to follow all of those sentiments. No. I would strongly agree. I mean, I think it's about just having the conversations, finding the right people. Definitely second the, having a champion physician, having the right team will get you far. You know, and if you're looking to build that team, if you're looking to get involved in the ecosystem, go to the events. I mean, I would say one benefit, you know, and this is where I feel like during COVID, you know, the past 2 years we've been lacking. I feel like the virtual landscape doesn't really always lend well to the best networking opportunities. But as these events are happening again in person, go, introduce yourself, have the conversations, meet the people, and I think you'll slowly find where your team is going to be. You know, I would say there are always going to be challenges when you get into the details of, say, contracts and negotiating and CDAs and IP and, you know, sponsored agreements. Those are always going to have challenges because you have different people looking at it from different angles. But I think as long as you have the right team in place, those challenges can be overcome. Just takes a little bit of patience sometimes, but it can happen.
I think I saw one more hand.
I think Christine had
I'll
something to
make it
say.
really quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how the SWPDC tries to help companies also is, you know, we try to connect companies from outside of Houston who's not familiar with this ecosystem. And I'm also really glad that you brought up barriers, you know, from the industry side, like how do we access these great resources and what are ways that we can find collaborators that would be a great fit, that would be willing to work with us. And so I hope, and I'm just really glad to hear that Methodist is trying to make those more accessible and have less barriers. Especially, I know they're pretty large, like institutions, and so making that process easily navigatable. Okay.
Over the years, we worked with a few companies that were designing diagnostic devices or minimally used devices in the operating room. What I found is either the principals or PIs or founders came in contact with us, they approached us, or we somehow found them. But we haven't really had much luck working with institutions. I mean, now that you're here, I'm going to put you on the spot. Karen, you already answered the question. So, how do we approach or collaborate with you or find see if there's an opportunity where we can look at the projects that you're working on, how we can help you achieve your development goals?
Go right ahead.
Well, if it's a pediatric device and you're interested in collaborating with, you know, anyone at Texas Children's, Baylor, I would say reach out to the SWPDC and we can start those conversations. You know, even if it's something that I would say we don't have space for at Texas Children's because, you know, we already do have quite a lot of projects, quite a lot of research opportunities in areas of interest. We could reach out to our partners. You know, we have recent conversations with Arkansas Children's Hospital. They have their own accelerator process. So even if it's not something that would happen immediately here down the street, we have several partners, and that's where I think developing the right relationships and just having the, you know, kind of getting introduced to the ecosystem, we can help. We can find someone that would be able to have those opportunities to develop your areas of interest.
I'll keep it simple. So just reach out to me. I mean, that's my job, is to engage clinicians and find potential collaborations. We work very well with the TMC Innovation. We actually work with them through the selection process of different companies that go through that accelerator. And realistically, we want to see those companies here, so just reach out.
Thank you for the script. I appreciate that. Just reach out to me. So if it's Texas A&M, so obviously I do this for InMed down here in Houston, but I did try to make clear in my talk that it's also about bringing the campus and College Station into play. And so there have been different times where people have asked me, you know, do you know anybody that works on ultrasound? Yeah, we've got a professor, Raffaella Righetti, up there, who actually designs ultrasound systems, MRI systems, you know, pediatric devices. We're part of that consortium. So I can connect you to InMed if you're interested in collaborating and having access to these brilliant InMed students. I see them, some of them sitting back there who are just chomping at the bit for things to work on. Or if you want to engage, you know, an experienced faculty member that's in a particular area, I can help make that connection as well. I do want to say one last thing about the previous thing, the previous comment about you know, what we were talking about with collaboration here in the TMC that I don't think we've said, but it should be obvious to everybody, is I think everybody up here realizes that, and I was looking into this recently, we're all about understanding that if we improve the situation in Houston, like you can actually Google and find out what are the top cities in this country, right, for medical technology innovation. Right now, we're ranked about 7. And the trajectory is going up. And when you see TMC 3 that he referred to, that's a $5 billion investment and continuing that upward trajectory, right? And I think we all realize that it serves all of us if the reputation of Houston goes up as one of the leading places that you can do technology innovation in the medical space.
I'll just say you can contact me as well. I understand it is a challenge, even in a big institution, to understand who does what and how to get in front of them. We also have to recognize that everybody is really busy, so we want to have a good way to engage people at the right time and not, you know, just flood them. That's one of the challenges, and so you know, having that point of contact, having a clear path, and having someone to shepherd you through the process is important, and then help you interact with the different personalities that you're going to encounter is also important.
This coming from a guy who does 48-hour spinal pelvic surgery procedures, by the way.
All right, anyone else? Hendra. This is a perfect discussion for SW.
Okay. Very good question. So we report to the FDA on everything that we do, on the progress of all of our 150 portfolio companies. One of the questions that we repeatedly ask is, what unmet need are you serving? So it really varies across the board. The devices of our portfolio companies could be something as simple as a specialized type of incubator to help babies that are going through withdrawal when they've been born from mothers that have various addictions. You know, it could be something that's implantable. I mean, it's really, it varies across the board, but I would say one of the things that we always encourage our innovators and, you know, our physician champions is, what unmet need are you serving? And we go from there. So we look at the problem first and try to think about how we can develop it. You know, obviously we do work with a wide range of companies, so we do look at, you know, we also tap them into reimbursement experts and commercialization, marketing experts, so that we can help them think through the process as far as, you know, how to make a device that is going to be available for a wide range of people and not just something that's going to be isolated to a few.